The small-town courthouse sat quietly in the morning sun, its red brick facade worn by years of weather and time. A thin layer of frost glimmered on the steps, hinting at the crisp February air. Inside, polished wooden benches reflected the dim, serious light that filtered through tall, narrow windows. The faint scent of old books, varnish, and just a hint of coffee hung in the air. The building felt solemn, almost sacred, as though it held the weight of every decision made within its walls for decades. This morning the tension was palpable, sharper than usual. Among the attendees was a little girl, no more than 3, clutching her mother's hand. Her tiny fingers wrapped tightly around her mother, nails digging lightly into the skin as her wide brown eyes darted from one corner of the courtroom to the other. The polished floors reflected her small shoes, the pale sunlight bouncing off her hair, giving her an almost halo-like glow. She had never been to a courthouse before, and everything about it was both intimidating and fascinating. The serious faces of adults, the sharp lines of suits and uniforms, the hushed conversations, and the occasional scrape of a chair, all of it held her attention completely. Her mother, Emma, tried to keep her close, leaning down to whisper softly in her ear, "Stay by me, honey. It's important to be quiet." But the little girl's gaze was fixed on something else entirely, a large German shepherd sitting calmly near the front of the courtroom. His coat gleamed in shades of gold and black under the fluorescent lights. His ears pricked up whenever someone moved, eyes sharp yet kind. This was Rex, the police dog who had become a local hero. Everyone in the town knew his name. Stories of his bravery had been recounted on the news, in the papers, and through the local grapevine. Yet for the little girl, Rex wasn't just a hero or a symbol of law enforcement. He was fascinating, almost magical. As the judge, a tall man with a salt-and-pepper beard and wire-rimmed glasses, entered the room, the whispers hushed immediately. Everyone rose in unison, the wooden floorboards creaking under the movement. The judge's robe swished softly as he walked toward the bench, eyes scanning the crowd with quiet authority. He nodded once to the court clerk before raising his gavel. "Please be seated," he intoned, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the law. Emma guided her daughter into a bench near the back, far enough away from the front to avoid disrupting the proceedings, yet close enough that the girl could still see Rex. The case before them was serious. A string of local thefts had rattled the town over the past few months. Residents had reported missing items, some of sentimental value, others essential for daily life. The police had struggled for weeks to find clues, until Rex, with his keen sense of smell and disciplined training, tracked the suspect through a series of alleys and abandoned lots. The dog's ability to detect minute traces of scent had led authorities directly to the culprit, who had been apprehended just days before. Now, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation as testimony would recount Rex's role in bringing justice. Even among the serious adults, murmurs of admiration surfaced whenever Rex moved slightly. He was impeccably trained, sitting in perfect attention, his leash held lightly by Officer Daniels, a burly man with a gentle demeanor who had been Rex's handler for years. Rex's eyes, intelligent and alert, seemed to follow every person, every subtle movement in the room. For the little girl, this dog was mesmerizing. She had a habit of observing things closely, noticing small details others missed. The way Rex's tail barely twitched, the way his ears tilted toward the judge, and the calmness of his breathing, all of it fascinated her in ways that went beyond ordinary curiosity. Emma whispered again, "Honey, remember to stay calm. Don't go near the dog." But her daughter's attention was already elsewhere. She leaned slightly forward on the bench, peering over the polished wooden edge as if drawn by an invisible force. There was something in the air, a combination of tension, excitement, and an almost sacred quiet that seemed to connect the girl and the dog without words. She softly hummed a tune under her breath, a habit she had when she was both nervous and curious. Rex's ears twitched at the sound, as if acknowledging her presence, though he remained perfectly composed. The first witnesses took their seats, recounting the events of the night of the last theft. Police officers described the scene, nodding footprints, broken locks, and discarded items. Each detail painted a picture of fear and uncertainty, but also of meticulous investigation. The adults in the courtroom listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes or exchanging quiet whispers. The girl, however, barely understood the words. She didn't need to. Her attention was on Rex, how he shifted slightly, how his eyes tracked the movement of people, how his posture remained calm and dignified even amidst the chaos of testimony. She had a strange sense of connection, a feeling that this dog was both protector and observer, capable of understanding things beyond ordinary human perception. Then came a break in the testimony. The judge called for a recess, and the courtroom slowly emptied except for the core parties and a few observers. The little girl's curiosity got the better of her. She tugged at Emma's hand gently. "Mommy, can I go see the dog?" she whispered, almost afraid to speak too loudly. Emma hesitated, torn between strict adherence to rules and the innocence radiating from her daughter. Before she could answer, the girl had already shifted slightly, standing on the bench to get a better view. Rex's eyes, attentive and calm, followed her movement. It was almost as if he recognized her, not just as a human presence, but as someone connected in some deeper way. Officer Daniels noticed the little girl's gaze and smiled gently, kneeling slightly to meet her eyes. "She's safe," he whispered to Emma. "Rex knows what he's doing. He's very gentle." Emma exhaled, a mixture of relief and nervousness. She allowed her daughter to stand fully now, gripping the edge of the bench as she leaned closer. The girl's small face lit up in awe. She softly whispered to herself, "Hi, big dog, you're so brave." Rex's ears twitched, his head tilting slightly. The courtroom's usual tension, thick and heavy, seemed to soften in the presence of this quiet interaction. Even among the adults, a subtle shift occurred. Lawyers paused in their preparation, officers straightened but softened, and the judge glanced down briefly, raising an eyebrow in mild surprise. The sight of a toddler, so small and fragile, yet unafraid and full of curiosity, speaking gently to a working police dog, was oddly disarming. It reminded everyone present of something essential. Courage and connection often appear where they are least expected, and sometimes innocence can speak truths that formality and procedure cannot. For the little girl, the courthouse was no longer a place of intimidating authority. It was a stage, a quiet theater where she and Rex shared a silent understanding. Every detail of his presence, the warmth of his fur, the softness in his eyes, the precision of his posture, made her feel safe. For Rex, the little girl represented trust, unfiltered and uncomplicated. In that moment, without a single word exchanged, a bond formed, one that would soon astonish everyone present and touch hearts far beyond the walls of this small-town courthouse. The courtroom settled into a tense silence as Officer Daniels rose to give his testimony. Rex sat beside him, taut with training yet calm, exuding the quiet strength that had earned him the respect of the town. The officer's voice, steady and measured, recounted the night when the suspect had fled after a string of break-ins. The details were precise, methodical, almost cinematic. The dim streetlights, the scattered evidence, the frightened residents who had called in the alerts. Each word painted a vivid picture, but it was Rex who truly captured attention. Officer Daniels described how Rex had tracked the suspect through a maze of alleyways, over fences, and past barking neighborhood dogs. Rex didn't hesitate, Daniels said. He followed every scent, no matter how faint, no matter how twisted the path. He stayed focused, calm, and precise. Without him, we might never have caught him. The courtroom nodded in solemn agreement. They had all heard police reports before, but to see the dog in person, the embodiment of those reports, added an almost mystical weight to his actions. The little girl leaned forward slightly on the bench, her eyes wide. She had never seen anyone perform heroism in such a way, and certainly never imagined a dog could be so brave. For her, Rex was a living storybook hero, the kind that never needed a crown or cape. She whispered to herself softly, "He's so strong, he's like a superhero." Her mother, Emma, smiled, brushing back a loose strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. She could see the fascination in her daughter's eyes, the awe that was impossible to contain. Daniels continued, describing the moment Rex cornered the suspect near a vacant lot. He didn't bite. He didn't lunge. He simply held his ground, alert, commanding respect. The suspect froze. That's when we were able to move in. Murmurs of admiration echoed quietly throughout the courtroom. Rex's presence alone, his unwavering discipline and calm authority, had helped subdue a potentially dangerous criminal without unnecessary violence. The girl's tiny fingers tightened around her mother's hand as she tried to absorb every detail. To her, it was as if Rex had performed magic. The officer paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. "Rex isn't just a dog," he said finally. "He's a partner, a protector, and in ways we sometimes don't fully understand, a comfort to people in their most stressful moments." The judge nodded, his stern expression softening slightly. Witnesses and lawyers exchanged glances, some whispering quietly. Even the court clerk allowed herself a brief smile. Rex, sensing the attention, lifted his head slightly, tail resting calmly on the floor, ears perked. He understood the weight of the moment in his own way. The little girl, captivated, whispered to her mother, "Mommy, he's really brave, isn't he?" Emma nodded, her voice quiet. "Yes, honey, he's one of the bravest dogs in the whole town." The girl's gaze never wavered from Rex. She noticed the way his muscles were relaxed yet ready, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the intelligence shining in his eyes. In her mind, he wasn't just a police dog. He was a guardian, a friend, and a hero rolled into one. Officer Daniels began to describe Rex's training, a regimen of discipline and dedication that started when he was a puppy. "We start young," Daniels explained. They learn scent recognition, obedience, socialization, and how to respond calmly under stress. But it's more than training. Rex has a temperament that is exceptional, calm under pressure, gentle with children, yet focused when duty calls. That combination is rare. The adults in the courtroom listened with respect. The girl's fascination deepened. She leaned forward again, whispering under her breath, "He's perfect." As the testimony continued, Daniels recounted moments when Rex had comforted officers returning from stressful scenes. After tough nights, he's been there to lean on. Even a simple nudge or a quiet presence helps more than you'd believe. He's more than law enforcement, he's family. The courtroom was quiet. Most adults nodded, some wiped away a hidden tear, and the girl's eyes sparkled as she listened. She felt the connection between people and this incredible dog in ways she couldn't fully articulate, but instinctively understood. The atmosphere began to shift. What had started as a formal recounting of a criminal case was evolving into a story of courage, loyalty, and empathy. Rex's heroism wasn't just about catching a suspect. It was about presence, protection, and unwavering loyalty. The little girl leaned closer to her mother again. "Mommy, he's helping everyone, isn't he?" Emma's heart swelled. She whispered, "Yes, honey, he helps everyone." The girl smiled softly, and even amidst the seriousness of the courtroom, a warmth began to spread. Daniels concluded his testimony by showing a small photo album of Rex in action, sniffing for evidence, sitting calmly at a crime scene, wagging his tail when a resident approached, and even resting quietly after long hours. The visual struck a chord. The girl's eyes lit up, lingering on a picture of Rex with his tongue slightly out, ears alert, eyes full of wisdom. "He's smiling at everyone," she murmured. "He's happy, he's a good boy." The courtroom chuckled quietly, charmed by her innocent observation. Even hardened officers softened at her words. As the break ended, the judge reminded everyone that proceedings would continue in a few minutes. The girl's fascination with Rex hadn't waned. If anything, it had grown. She tugged gently at her mother's hand. "Mommy, can I talk to him?" Emma hesitated, recalling the strict rules about service animals in court. But before she could answer, she noticed Rex's gaze was on her daughter. His posture remained calm, inviting, yet respectful. It was as if he, too, recognized the bond forming. For the girl, this was no longer just a police dog story. It was a living, breathing example of heroism, empathy, and connection. She could feel it in her chest, in the tiny beat of her heart, that this dog was extraordinary. and she was drawn to him in a way that transcended rules, law, or the seriousness of the courthouse. To her, Rex was magic, courage wrapped in golden fur, and she couldn't help but reach toward that magic, even in the most solemn of places. As the courtroom slowly filled again, the murmurs of admiration and awe lingered. The girl, perched on the edge of the bench, whispered softly to herself, "He's the best. He's really the best." Rex, sitting attentively, seemed to acknowledge her words with a slight tilt of his head and the quiet wag of his tail. In that moment before the trial continued, the bond between a 3-year-old girl and a police dog became unmistakable, a connection that would soon astonish everyone present. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet moment before innocence and heroism collided in a courtroom that would never forget the little girl's words. The courtroom had quieted once again, papers rustling softly, shoes tapping lightly against polished floors. The girl, perched on the edge of the bench, could hardly contain her curiosity. Rex sat near the front, calm, composed, and alert, his eyes scanning the room but often drifting toward her. Something invisible yet undeniable had formed between them, a silent understanding that only the innocent and perceptive could perceive. While adults whispered, exchanged notes, and followed the proceedings with measured attention, the little girl's gaze remained fixed entirely on him. "Mommy, can I?" she began, her tiny voice trembling slightly. Emma, crouched beside her, understood immediately. She knew the rules: no children near service animals mid-proceedings, but something about the situation felt different. She saw the trust in Rex's eyes, the gentle tilt of his head, the way he didn't flinch as the girl shifted slightly closer. Emma exhaled, a mix of hesitation and surrender, and whispered, "Okay, but just a little, honey. Be gentle." The girl carefully climbed down from the bench, knees wobbling slightly, and walked toward Rex. The officer holding his leash, Officer Daniels, bent down, offering a reassuring smile. "Rex knows what he's doing," he said softly. "He's gentle with her. Go ahead." The girl froze for a moment, studying him. Then, in the pure, unfiltered curiosity of a 3-year-old, she whispered, "Hi, big dog, did you catch the bad man?" Rex's ears twitched. He tilted his head and regarded her steadily, his body language calm yet attentive. He didn't bark, growl, or move suddenly. He simply sat, a living sentinel, as if listening carefully to every word she said. The courtroom staff and officers, who had been watching quietly, were taken aback. Never before had a toddler interacted with a working police dog so fearlessly. The girl, oblivious to their astonishment, stepped a little closer and extended her tiny hand toward him. Her touch was delicate, tentative, yet confident in its sincerity. Rex lowered his head slightly, allowing her to pat his soft, golden fur. She giggled, a sound like wind chimes, as she felt the warmth beneath her small hand. "You're so big and so brave," she whispered, her words carrying an innocence that cut through the formal tension in the room. Even the judge, sitting high on his bench, allowed himself a small, surprised smile. Witnesses paused, scribbling notes, as if the moment itself was more memorable than any testimony. Officer Daniels crouched slightly, keeping a watchful eye, but he, too, was caught in the charm of the interaction. "She has a way with him," he murmured to a fellow officer. "I've never seen a toddler approach him like this. He trusts her instantly." Indeed, Rex's calm composure spoke volumes. This was not just obedience or training at play. It was recognition, empathy, and an almost magical bond between child and dog. The girl's mother, Emma, watched with bated breath. She had always known her daughter was fearless and unusually perceptive for her age, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. She whispered softly, encouraging her daughter, "Say hello properly, honey. Tell him your name." The little girl's eyes sparkled as she knelt slightly before Rex. "I'm Lily," she said in a clear, deliberate voice. "And you're Rex, right?" Rex tilted his head as if acknowledging her. His tail gave a slight, controlled wag. The room was silent again, everyone captivated by the moment. It was as though the child's innocence had created a pause in reality, a bubble where formality and law gave way to trust, courage, and connection. The girl leaned closer, whispering, "Thank you for helping the people. You're really good." Her voice was soft, yet filled with genuine admiration. The murmurs in the courtroom were audible now. whispers of "How brave is she?" And "Look at that dog, he's listening." Adults who had been hardened by years of legal proceedings and life's harsh realities found themselves softening. There was something about the combination of Lily's innocence and Rex's gentle attentiveness that reminded them of the pure, uncomplicated essence of loyalty and courage. Rex responded subtly, nudging his nose lightly against her hand, careful not to startle her. Lily giggled, the sound echoing faintly in the hushed courtroom. "You like me, don't you?" she whispered, smiling broadly. Officer Daniels leaned in, speaking softly so only Emma could hear. "He does. You've got a gift, kid. He trusts you like he trusts no one else." Emma smiled, feeling a swell of pride and relief. This tiny interaction, so simple and innocent, had already left a mark on everyone watching. Then, as if guided by an unspoken understanding, Lily spoke words that no one expected. She looked up at the judge, the prosecutors, and the audience with clarity and confidence far beyond her years. "He's a good dog," she said. "He keeps everyone safe." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. The judge blinked. The officers and lawyers exchanged glances. Even the court clerk paused mid-note, unsure if she should interrupt the moment. Her statement, simple yet profound, carried more weight than any legal argument presented that day. A 3-year-old had articulated the essence of Rex's heroism in one clear sentence: protection, courage, and kindness, all wrapped into a single living being. Adults were touched in ways they hadn't anticipated. Words like hero and protector suddenly seemed tangible, embodied in the golden German shepherd sitting calmly in the center of the room. Emma's eyes glistened with tears. She pulled Lily close for a quick hug, whispering, "That was very brave, baby, very brave indeed." Lily, undeterred by the attention, continued her gentle interaction, patting Rex's head and speaking softly. "You make the world better," she said, as if understanding intuitively what adults often struggled to articulate. Even Rex seemed to respond, lowering his head slightly, as though nodding in acknowledgement. The courtroom had transformed. What began as a rigid, tense space had softened into something almost magical, a temporary haven where innocence and loyalty shone brighter than procedure or protocol. Witnesses glanced at each other, exchanging knowing smiles. Lawyers whispered quietly, saying, "We didn't expect this," while the judge allowed a brief, fond smile to cross his face. Everyone present recognized that this moment, a tiny girl speaking to a police dog, was extraordinary. Even the suspect's family, present in the courtroom, couldn't help but notice the bond. There was no fear, no intimidation, only mutual recognition and respect. The sheer purity of Lily's words and Rex's calm presence transcended the legal narrative. The girl didn't understand all the complexities of law or crime, yet she had grasped the core truth. Rex was a hero, and heroes protected and comforted people, not just enforced rules. As the break ended and the proceedings prepared to resume, Lily reluctantly climbed back onto her mother's lap. She gave Rex one last pat, whispering, "Good luck, Rex. You're the best." Rex responded with a slight wag of his tail, a gentle reminder that their connection, though brief in this moment, was lasting. Officer Daniels gave a small nod, understanding that the bond was real, tangible, and unforgettable. For everyone in the courtroom, that small interaction became the defining moment of the morning. Adults had come prepared for testimony, arguments, and legal procedures. They left with something entirely different: a story of courage, innocence, and the profound understanding that sometimes the smallest voices convey the greatest truths. Lily's first words to Rex had bridged the gap between human and animal, adult and child, law and heart, leaving an impression that would linger far longer than the details of the case itself. The courtroom, once filled with quiet tension and hushed discussions, had been completely transformed by the tiny girl's interaction with Rex. Adults who had come prepared for months of testimony, arguments, and legal formalities found themselves holding their breath at the sight of Lily, only 3 years old, speaking gently to a police dog who had become the town's hero. What had started as curiosity and fascination had become a moment that nobody present would ever forget. Judge Hawthorne, a man known for his strict adherence to procedure and courtroom decorum, raised an eyebrow as he watched Lily lean close to Rex. The girl, oblivious to the weight of the room, looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "He's a good dog," she repeated confidently. "He keeps everyone safe." The judge blinked, taken aback by the clarity and simplicity of her statement. The courtroom fell into a hushed silence, as if the walls themselves were pausing to hear. A ripple of emotion passed through the spectators. Lawyers paused mid-note, officers straightened, and even the court clerk looked up from her paperwork. No one had anticipated that a toddler's observation could convey so much truth. Lily's words, though simple, carried profound weight. In a space dominated by adult logic, rules, and procedures, the purity of a child's perspective pierced through like sunlight, illuminating something essential about courage, loyalty, and protection. The defense attorney, who had been preparing his next line of questioning, found himself holding his pen midair. His eyes softened as he glanced at Rex, sitting calmly, attentive yet unbothered by the sudden attention. The officer's pride was evident, but he, too, was moved by the girl's observation. "That's remarkable," Officer Daniels whispered to a colleague, careful not to speak too loudly. "Most adults can't see it the way she does. She gets it." Emma, Lily's mother, felt her chest tight. She had expected curiosity and perhaps a small distraction, but this was something different. Her daughter had always been insightful, but the confidence with which she spoke about Rex startled even her. She reached down to hold Lily's hand, squeezing it gently. "You're right, baby," she whispered. "He is a good dog. You're very brave to say that." Lily smiled softly, her attention still firmly on Rex. The judge cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the room. "Ms. Green," he said to Emma, "I appreciate your daughter's honesty, but we must maintain order. Toddlers and service animals don't typically mix during testimony." Emma nodded, though she could see the softness behind the judge's eyes. There was no anger, only recognition of the moment's significance. But Lily, undeterred, tilted her head and spoke again, louder this time. "He's helping the sad people, too." The courtroom froze. Every adult present felt the weight of those words. "The sad people," murmured one officer, his voice tinged with awe. The prosecutor, a woman known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense demeanor, softened, a small smile breaking through her usual seriousness. The child's innocence had not only captured the essence of Rex's heroism, but had added an unexpected layer: empathy. Rex was not just enforcing the law, he was protecting, comforting, and providing solace. Lily, in her own simple way, had articulated what the adults could barely explain. A few people in the audience dabbed at their eyes discreetly. Lily's statement had shifted the focus of the courtroom. What had begun as a procedural recounting of a theft case had transformed into a story of courage, loyalty, and compassion. It was impossible to deny the impact of this tiny girl and the dog who had saved the town from months of fear. Every eye, every pair of ears, was drawn to this unlikely pair, a toddler and a police dog, demonstrating something far greater than law and order: the innate ability to understand what it meant to protect and care. Rex responded subtly to Lily's words, nudging her hand with his nose, his golden eyes meeting hers. The motion was gentle, controlled, almost reverent. The audience gasped softly. It was a silent acknowledgement of their bond, an affirmation that Lily's words were not only heard but understood. Officer Daniels allowed himself a proud smile, recognizing that the child had achieved something remarkable. She had communicated with a creature trained to enforce discipline and loyalty, and he had responded with trust and acknowledgement. The judge, realizing that interrupting would diminish the moment, allowed a pause. He watched Lily, who knelt slightly, whispering as she stroked Rex's fur. "You're not scary," she said, "and you make everyone feel better." The courtroom felt heavier with emotion, a mixture of admiration, surprise, and gentle awe. Adults who had spent years in positions of authority felt humbled by the clarity and truth that a 3-year-old could articulate so simply. Emma exhaled slowly, holding back tears. She had raised a brave, curious child, but she hadn't imagined the impact Lily could have in a formal setting like this. She whispered softly, "That's enough, baby. Let's let the court continue." But Lily, sensing the importance of her connection with Rex, paused. Her gaze remained on him, steady and thoughtful, as if she were considering the best way to express what she felt. Then she added something unexpected, a statement that made even the most seasoned officers and lawyers in the room pause. "He's not just brave, he's happy when people are happy, and he's sad when people are sad." The courtroom collectively inhaled. The sheer insight of a toddler into the emotional capacity of a police dog stunned everyone. No testimony, no detailed report could have captured this truth. Rex's presence had always comforted people in ways adults didn't notice, and Lily had observed it with perfect clarity. The judge leaned forward slightly, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "I think we've learned something very important today," he said softly, addressing the room. "Sometimes courage and understanding are expressed in ways that defy logic, and sometimes wisdom comes from the smallest voices." The statement resonated with everyone present. Adults glanced at one another, some nodding subtly, others wiping away a quiet tear. Even the stern officers guarding the room seemed humbled by the unexpected depth of insight. Rex, sensing the collective awe and appreciation, remained calm yet attentive. His golden eyes flicked between Lily and Officer Daniels. He had trained for precision, for discipline, for law enforcement. But in that moment, he was simply a dog, responding instinctively to the warmth and honesty of a child who recognized something that adults often overlooked: the heart behind the heroism. Emma finally stepped forward, guiding Lily back to her seat, her voice filled with quiet pride. "You did very well, baby. You were kind and brave." Lily smiled, resting her small hand on Rex one last time before climbing back into her mother's lap. The bond they shared was unmistakable, and though brief, it had left an indelible mark on everyone present. Adults whispered quietly among themselves, noting the extraordinary clarity and innocence of Lily's words. By the time the court resumed, the atmosphere had subtly shifted. What had been a tense, procedural space had been transformed into one of admiration, empathy, and gentle inspiration. Adults carried with them the unexpected reminder that bravery and understanding are not solely the domain of trained professionals or experienced witnesses. They sometimes appear in the smallest, most innocent voices. Even as proceedings continued, the memory of Lily's words and her connection with Rex lingered in the room. Each glance at the dog reminded everyone of what she had said. Courage, kindness, and empathy could be embodied in ways far beyond expectation. For the little girl, the act of speaking to Rex had been simple, natural, and instinctive. For everyone else, it had been extraordinary. As the morning progressed, whispers of her statement circulated quietly. The little girl who saw Rex's heart. The toddler who understood a police dog better than adults. She knows what courage really means. The courtroom's collective attention had shifted, not away from the case, but toward the undeniable truth that connection, empathy, and understanding could transcend age, species, and circumstance. Lily's words, simple yet profound, had left the adults with a quiet lesson. Sometimes, the most powerful testimony doesn't come from evidence, charts, or statements. It comes from the heart. The bond between a 3-year-old girl and a police dog had revealed an emotional truth that no courtroom procedure could contain, a truth that would resonate far beyond the walls of the small-town courthouse. The hum of the courthouse faded slightly as Lily leaned back against her mother's lap, eyes still fixed on Rex. For her, this was no ordinary dog. He was a protector, a friend, and a silent confidant. As her small fingers twitched with curiosity, her mind wandered back to the first day she had met him, a memory so vivid it felt like it had happened just yesterday. It had been a crisp autumn morning at the local daycare center. The police department had arranged a demonstration for children, introducing them to Rex and explaining the role of K-9 officers. Lily had been hesitant at first. The other children ran excitedly toward the dog, giggling and shouting. But she, small and shy, had stayed behind, clutching a worn, stuffed animal close to her chest. Her eyes widened as Rex approached, his golden coat glistening in the sunlight, ears perked, and eyes bright yet calm. The handler, Officer Daniels, knelt beside Rex. "It's okay, Lily," he had said, noticing her hesitation. "Rex is very gentle. He's here to show you how we work together, and he's very friendly." Lily swallowed nervously, her small heart pounding. She had never been this close to such a large dog, but there was something about Rex, his steady gaze, his calm demeanor, that made her feel safe. Slowly, she stepped forward, holding her stuffed animal out as a bridge of courage. Rex sniffed the toy gently, his massive nose brushing against the soft fabric. Lily giggled softly, a sound like wind chimes, and took another small step closer. Officer Daniels guided her gently. "You can pat him if you want," he whispered. Lily raised her hand tentatively, placing it on Rex's soft fur. The dog remained perfectly still, allowing her touch without flinching. Her eyes lit up, and for the first time she felt a connection she couldn't describe. It was trust, pure and unspoken. From that day on, Lily had insisted on learning everything about Rex. She asked questions constantly. How does he find bad people? Why does he stay so calm? Can he tell when someone is sad? Each answer, explained patiently by Officer Daniels, fascinated her. She absorbed every detail, sometimes repeating them to herself as if committing them to memory. Her fascination was not just with the heroism Rex displayed. It was with the empathy, intelligence, and patience that he exuded effortlessly. At home, Lily recreated Rex's actions with her stuffed animal. She led it gently around imaginary crime scenes, whispered encouragements, and imagined comforting people who were scared or sad. Emma often watched her, astonished by her daughter's attention to detail and the emotional depth she displayed even at 3 years old. "You really understand him, Lily," she said one evening, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's eyes. Lily smiled shyly, patting the stuffed dog. "He's my friend," she whispered. "He's brave and kind, and he helps people feel better." Their bond grew quietly but steadily. Lily often talked to Rex in her imagination, telling him about her day, her favorite toys, or her feelings. She never thought anyone else could understand the conversations she had with him, but somehow Rex seemed to. His responses, gentle nudges, calm stares, slight tail wags, were enough to reassure her that he heard her and cared. This subtle communication, unnoticed by others, formed a bridge of trust and friendship that was extraordinary for someone so young. Weeks passed, and the local community began to recognize the unique relationship between Lily and Rex. At public demonstrations, she would approach him confidently, patting him gently while the other children clung to parents or squealed with excitement. Officer Daniels would often smile, nodding how Lily instinctively understood the cues Rex gave her: the gentle lowering of his head, the slight wag of his tail, the calm sit that signaled he was ready for interaction. Their connection was so natural it was almost instinctive, a language of gestures and glances that transcended words. Emma, proud yet cautious, sometimes worried about the girl's boldness. "Honey, you have to be careful," she would remind her. "Rex is a working dog, he's brave, but he has rules to follow." Lily would nod solemnly, her tiny brow furrowed in concentration. "I know, Mommy, I'll be gentle. I want him to be happy." Emma couldn't help but smile at her daughter's insight and emotional intelligence. Even at 3, Lily understood respect, empathy, and connection, qualities most adults struggled to balance. This bond became evident in small, subtle ways. When Lily was upset or scared, she would whisper stories to Rex, telling him her worries. She believed he understood, and sometimes she swore his golden eyes softened in response. Officer Daniels, watching from a distance, would often shake his head in quiet amazement. "She has a gift with him," he told Emma one day. "Most people, even adults, can't connect with a dog like she does. There's a mutual understanding there that's rare, maybe even unique." It wasn't long before the local community noticed, too. Photos appeared in the town newsletter showing Lily patting Rex, smiling as he sat calmly beside her, their eyes meeting in quiet recognition. Stories circulated about the small girl who had an unusual understanding of the police dog, who treated him not just as a hero, but as a friend. People admired their connection, remarking on the bravery and empathy demonstrated by such a young child. The bond was inspiring, a reminder that heroism and kindness could exist in tandem, transcending age and circumstance. As the memory replayed in Lily's mind, she thought of the countless afternoons spent with Rex, walking through the park during demonstrations, whispering to him in the quiet of the early morning, pretending to solve mysteries together. Each moment, no matter how small, had built the foundation for the trust she displayed now in the courthouse. She had learned patience, understanding, and courage through these simple interactions. She had learned that a hero could be gentle, strong, and aware of the feelings of others all at once. Returning to the present, Lily's tiny hand still brushed against Rex's fur. The bond forged over months of gentle touches, whispered words, and quiet observations lent her courage in the courtroom. She wasn't just a curious child exploring a new environment. She was someone who knew, in the deepest part of her heart, how to communicate with a being whose actions had saved lives and protected the community. Her trust in him was instinctual, unwavering, and completely honest. The adults in the courtroom, unaware of the full depth of their friendship, watched in awe as Lily continued to interact with Rex. To them, it was extraordinary enough that a 3-year-old could speak confidently to a police dog. To Lily, it was entirely ordinary. She had known him long before this moment. She had watched him work, comfort, and protect. She had learned to interpret his subtle cues, understand his presence, and recognize his empathy. This wasn't a novelty or a spectacle. It was a continuation of a bond that had begun long before the trial, in the playgrounds and hallways of her small town. Even Officer Daniels, experienced and observant as he was, could see the culmination of their shared history in the little girl's confident stance and gentle voice. "She trusts him," he whispered to another officer. "And he trusts her. That's why he listens. That's why he responds." The realization settled over the room. The bond between Lily and Rex wasn't built in the courthouse. It had been nurtured over months of subtle interactions, trust, and shared experiences. And now it was visible for all to see. The flashback ended in Lily's mind as she looked up at Rex once more. She didn't need words to explain herself. Her presence, her touch, and the clarity in her gaze said everything. And in response, Rex sat calmly, ears alert, eyes soft, tail gently swaying. Together, they were more than a girl and a dog. They were a partnership built on trust, courage, and mutual understanding. And this partnership, invisible to most, was about to make an even bigger impact on everyone in the courtroom. The courtroom had grown still once more, the kind of stillness that only comes when the impossible quietly asserts itself. Lily, perched slightly on her mother's lap, watched Rex with rapt attention, her small hands gently brushing his golden fur. The months of quiet understanding, of whispered stories and gentle pats had led to this exact moment. And now, with the weight of the trial pressing down on the adults, Lily's voice pierced the solemn air, simple yet profound. "He's not scary," she said softly, her words carrying clarity beyond her years. "And he helps the sad people." The room froze. Every adult present felt the quiet power of her statement. Lawyers, officers, and even the judge paused mid-breath. They had been focused on evidence, reports, and procedure, but in a single sentence, this tiny girl had captured a truth far more profound. Rex's heroism went beyond catching criminals. It was about comfort, courage, and the emotional care he gave to people who had no one else. Officer Daniels shifted in his seat, eyes glistening as he glanced at Rex. The dog, calm yet alert, gently nudged Lily's hand with his nose, an almost imperceptible gesture of acknowledgement. "She sees it," Daniels whispered to another officer. "She understands what most adults don't even notice." Even the court clerk, who had spent years cataloging testimony and evidence, blinked back a tear. The little girl, unaware of the courtroom's reactions, continued to speak softly to Rex, as if confirming the bond that had formed over countless quiet afternoons and playtime demonstrations. Lily's words hung in the air, a light in the heavy, formal space of the courthouse. "He's brave," she continued, "but he's kind too, and he makes everyone feel safe." Her statement, so simple, resonated deeply with everyone present. People shifted in their seats, exchanging glances that said more than words ever could. They were witnesses not to a crime or its resolution, but to something far rarer: the pure, unfiltered insight of a child who understood courage, empathy, and loyalty at its deepest level. Emma, holding Lily close, whispered gently, "You're amazing, baby. That's right, he's very brave and very kind." Lily smiled faintly, brushing her fingers over Rex's fur, oblivious to the emotional storm she had sparked in the courtroom. Her focus was entirely on him. She didn't understand fully the significance of her words, only that Rex was special, that he was comforting people, and that he was her friend. Her voice, innocent yet clear, carried a truth adults often struggled to articulate. The judge, a man whose life revolved around laws and procedure, leaned forward slightly, his gaze softening. "Sometimes," he said slowly, addressing the room, "the simplest words can reveal the most profound truths. A child's perspective can remind us of what really matters: courage, compassion, and understanding." His acknowledgement sent a subtle ripple of relief and admiration through the courtroom. Adults who had spent hours dissecting reports and testimonies suddenly understood that this small, fearless voice had reframed everything. Even the prosecutor, known for her sharp intellect and unflinching demeanor, allowed herself a small smile. She glanced at Officer Daniels, who nodded subtly in agreement. "She's right," he whispered, almost to himself. "Rex isn't just enforcing the law, he's protecting people, he's comforting them. He's making the world safer in ways adults can't even measure." The courtroom, though still officially in session, had shifted from tense formality to shared awe. Everyone felt it, the subtle miracle of a child articulating the essence of heroism. Lily's words didn't stop there. She leaned slightly forward, her tiny hands brushing over Rex's head. "He's happy when people are happy," she whispered, "and he's sad when people are sad." Adults exchanged stunned looks. The insight of a 3-year-old into the emotional capacity of a trained police dog was extraordinary. It revealed something almost mystical: that heroism and empathy could coexist, that courage was not only about physical acts, but also emotional resonance. A few spectators in the courtroom dabbed at their eyes, quietly moved. Officers who had faced danger countless times sat back, humbled by the clarity of a child's observation. Even the judge allowed a brief, fond smile to break his serious demeanor. Lily's words had pierced the rigidity of legal procedure, transforming the atmosphere into something warm, reflective, and unforgettable. The room was no longer just a space for testimony. It had become a theater of emotion, humility, and recognition. Rex, sensing the attention and the significance of the moment, leaned slightly toward Lily, pressing his nose gently against her hand. The movement was subtle, yet it carried profound meaning. The bond between them, built over weeks of careful observation, gentle pats and whispered stories, was now on display for everyone in the room. The dog's calm, attentive presence validated Lily's statements, as if confirming to the courtroom that her words were true. Emma, holding back tears, whispered softly, "Honey, that was perfect. You said exactly what you felt." Lily smiled, unaware of the impact her words had made. For her, this was natural. Rex was brave, kind, and comforting. Her statements weren't rehearsed or intended to impress anyone. They simply reflected the truth she had seen and experienced. The adults, however, were deeply moved. They were witnessing the power of pure perception, untainted by cynicism, fear, or expectation. The court reporter paused momentarily, pen hovering above paper, caught between recording proceedings and witnessing history. Witnesses shifted in their seats, murmuring quietly about the extraordinary insight of a 3-year-old. Lawyers exchanged glances, acknowledging that this small voice had cut through layers of evidence, argument, and testimony to touch something deeper. The courtroom had become more than a place for justice. It had become a space of revelation, where innocence met experience, and compassion met heroism. Even the suspect's family, present in a corner of the room, felt the weight of Lily's words. There was no fear, no tension, only the clarity of a child's perspective that revealed the essence of Rex's role: protection, empathy, and comfort. Adults who had been focused on guilt, punishment, and procedure suddenly understood that heroism could exist quietly, in ways that didn't always make the headlines but were felt deeply by those who experienced it firsthand. Officer Daniels, watching the scene unfold, shook his head slightly in awe. "She gets it," he said softly, almost to himself. "She really gets it." Rex, sitting patiently, allowed Lily to continue her gentle pats, ears flicking occasionally, eyes soft yet alert. It was as if he, too, understood the gravity of her words and the clarity of her insight. Together, they had created a moment that would resonate far beyond the walls of the small-town courthouse. Lily's words hung in the air, echoing softly through the room. "He helps the people," she whispered once more. "The sad people, the scared people, he helps them all." Adults felt the truth of her observation settle in their hearts. It was more than a statement about a police dog. It was a lesson about empathy, courage, and the power of kindness. The courtroom had been transformed, and no one present would ever forget the quiet heroism of a small child and a remarkable dog. Even as the judge prepared to resume formal proceedings, the impact of Lily's words lingered. Adults whispered quietly among themselves, acknowledging the unexpected lesson. Sometimes the purest truths come not from reports or testimony, but from observation, trust, and compassion. Lily had articulated what everyone felt but could not say aloud. And Rex, responding with calm attentiveness, validated her perception in ways that defied explanation. As the trial continued, the atmosphere remained subtly altered. Every glance at Rex reminded the courtroom of Lily's insight, every quiet breath carried the weight of her words, and every gesture between the child and the dog was a reminder that bravery, empathy, and heroism are often intertwined. The courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary, a rare moment when innocence and experience collided to reveal a truth that touched hearts universally. The courtroom, still steeped in awe from Lily's words, shifted once more. Everyone was captivated by the gentle bond unfolding before them. The little girl's insight had moved hearts and softened hardened expressions, but now all eyes turned to Rex, the golden German shepherd who had become both hero and silent teacher. The room waited, as if collectively holding its breath, to see if the dog would respond in a way that mirrored Lily's bravery and understanding. Rex's ears twitched slightly, his gaze steady and unwavering as he focused on the small figure kneeling beside him. Lily, sensing the weight of the moment but unafraid, leaned forward and whispered softly, "Do you understand me?" The words were innocent, almost shy, yet full of expectation. The adults in the courtroom leaned closer, unsure whether to intervene or simply witness. Officer Daniels, kneeling subtly beside Rex, remained still, his hands relaxed on the leash, trusting the bond that had formed over months of careful training and quiet observation. For a moment, Rex did nothing but watch, his amber eyes meeting Lily's with an intensity that made the room almost unbearably silent. Then, in a motion so subtle that only those paying close attention would notice, he lowered his head slightly and nudged her hand with his nose. The gesture was deliberate, gentle, and entirely respectful, an acknowledgement that went far beyond obedience. It was a response of understanding, of trust, and of quiet affirmation that their connection was real and meaningful. The courtroom collectively gasped. Adults shifted in their seats, whispers flowing through the room like soft ripples. "Did you see that?" one officer murmured. "He's actually responding to her. She's speaking to him and he's listening." Lawyers paused mid-note, court reporters' pens hovered above paper, and even the judge allowed a faint, approving smile to cross his face. The weight of this silent communication, a bond unspoken yet deeply understood, was almost too profound for words. Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "You understand me," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. She extended her hand further, pressing it gently against Rex's forehead. The dog leaned into her touch, allowing the warmth of her small hand to comfort him as much as he comforted her. The movement, slow and deliberate, seemed to say, "Yes, I hear you. I know you. You are safe." The simplicity of the interaction belied its depth, but anyone present could feel its significance. Officer Daniels' eyes glistened with emotion. He had trained Rex for years, taught him commands, obedience, and critical field work. But this unspoken acknowledgement between child and dog was beyond any manual or technique. It was instinctual, born of trust, patience, and mutual respect. "Most people never experience this," he whispered to a colleague. "She has a gift, and he responds to her because he knows she's sincere." Emma, holding back tears, leaned forward slightly. "Honey, you're amazing," she whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. Lily, barely 3, smiled faintly, her eyes never leaving Rex. For her, this was natural. She had spent countless hours observing him, patting him gently, talking to him softly. Now in the courtroom, surrounded by adults and authority, the bond they had built over months was being validated in the most public and profound way imaginable. Rex's response did not stop with a simple nudge. Slowly, he shifted closer, his head lowering to align with Lily's small frame. His eyes softened further, almost human in their expression, conveying a quiet understanding that transcended words. The gentle wag of his tail was almost imperceptible but carried immense meaning, trust, recognition, and reassurance. Every adult in the room noticed, holding back an audible gasp at the depth of communication unfolding before them. Lily reached out further, tentatively brushing her fingers across Rex's soft ears. "You're really a hero," she whispered. "Not just brave, but kind, too." Rex's ears flicked slightly, and he leaned into her touch. It was a response that carried weight, a silent confirmation that he understood her praise, her recognition, and her appreciation. The room seemed to hold its collective breath, realizing that this simple, quiet interaction was more moving than any testimony or report that had been presented that day. The judge, observing this remarkable scene, cleared his throat softly. "I think we've all witnessed something extraordinary," he said, his voice calm but layered with emotion. "Not every day does a courtroom see the pure understanding between a child and a service animal. Today, we are reminded that heroism comes in many forms, sometimes loud and dramatic, sometimes quiet and profound. And sometimes the smallest voice can speak the greatest truths." The statement hung in the room, echoed in the soft shuffling of adults leaning forward to observe the moment more closely. The audience watched in quiet reverence as Lily whispered again, "I know you help people, you help everyone." The clarity of her conviction was striking. Rex, still calm, gently pressed his nose against her hand once more. The dog's response, measured yet unmistakable, conveyed an affirmation beyond the capacity of words. "Yes, I help, I protect, and I feel your trust." The courtroom remained silent, overwhelmed by the depth of empathy unfolding before their eyes. Officer Daniels knelt, careful not to intrude on their interaction, and spoke quietly to the judge. She understands him in ways adults often never do. He trusts her because she sees him, not as a tool, not as a hero, but as a friend. That's rare, almost magical. His words captured what every adult in the room now understood. This was not just a demonstration of training or courage. It was a moment of connection, of pure, unfiltered understanding that crossed the boundaries of age, species, and circumstance. Emma wrapped a gentle arm around Lily, holding her close as the girl continued to whisper soft praises and quiet questions to Rex. "You're happy when people are happy," she said, "and you help them feel safe when they're scared." Rex responded subtly, leaning slightly against her, eyes soft and warm. The adults in the courtroom, witnesses to this silent dialogue, felt the gravity of the moment. A child's intuition and a dog's training converged to create something profoundly moving. Even the lawyers, usually guarded and analytical, allowed themselves a brief pause, realizing that the bond between Lily and Rex transcended procedure and protocol. The judge, seated high on the bench, nodded subtly, understanding the emotional resonance of the moment. "Let this be a reminder," he said softly, "that courage, kindness, and empathy are often demonstrated in ways we do not anticipate. Sometimes they are expressed without words, in gestures, glances, and gentle trust." As the moment lingered, Lily leaned back slightly, her hands resting lightly on Rex's shoulders. "You're my friend," she whispered, a small smile tugging at her lips. Rex, in response, lowered his head just enough to allow her to rest against him, eyes closed in calm contentment. The courtroom felt suspended in time, a rare collective pause where the ordinary weight of legal proceedings was replaced by the extraordinary power of connection, trust, and love. The silent communication between the two continued for several minutes, each gesture and touch reinforcing the bond that had been cultivated over months of gentle interaction and observation. Adults in the courtroom quietly wiped away tears, exchanged awed glances, and marveled at the depth of understanding unfolding before them. They had come expecting testimony, evidence, and legal procedure. Instead, they were witnessing something far rarer: the pure, unspoken dialogue of empathy and trust between a child and a dog. When Lily finally rose to her mother's side, she looked back at Rex one last time. "I love you, Rex," she whispered. The dog responded with a gentle nudge, ears flicking slightly, tail wagging in quiet acknowledgement. It was a response that required no words yet said everything. "I hear you, I see you, and I am here for you as always." The courtroom exhaled collectively, having witnessed a moment of connection that would be remembered for years to come. The courtroom, still humming with the quiet aftermath of Lily's interaction with Rex, settled into an unusual calm. Adults whispered softly, exchanging glances that conveyed awe, admiration, and a touch of humility. The proceedings, which had begun as a typical day of testimony, arguments, and legal deliberations, had been transformed into something far more extraordinary, a moment where courage, kindness, and empathy had been revealed in the purest form. Lily sat perched on her mother's lap, tiny hands brushing Rex's golden fur for one last lingering touch. The bond they shared, built over months of trust and quiet moments, radiated visibly. Officer Daniels watched from nearby, a faint smile on his face, recognizing the quiet heroism displayed in the interaction. This was more than a dog performing his duty, more than a child speaking honestly. It was a connection that transcended training, law, and expectation. The judge, leaning slightly forward from the bench, cleared his throat. His voice, calm and resonant, carried the weight of both authority and quiet appreciation. "I believe we have witnessed something remarkable today," he said. "Not every day does a courtroom observe a bond so profound, so simple yet so impactful. Today, we were reminded that heroism is not only measured by courage or action but also by empathy, trust, and understanding. And sometimes, it is revealed in the smallest voices among us." A soft murmur ran through the courtroom. Adults, lawyers, and officers who had been preoccupied with procedure, reports, and the mechanics of justice now felt the emotional truth of those words. They were witnesses not only to a trial, but to an unspoken lesson about life itself. Courage and kindness are not mutually exclusive, and empathy can speak louder than any argument or evidence presented in court. Emma held Lily gently, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to fully shed. "Honey, you did wonderful," she whispered softly. Lily, still focused on Rex, looked up briefly. "He's happy," she said, her voice calm and certain. "And he's brave, and he makes everyone feel safe." Her words, simple yet resonant, reminded everyone present of the unspoken bond between child and dog. Officer Daniels knelt slightly beside Rex, guiding him subtly without breaking the connection. "You've done an amazing job, buddy," he murmured to the dog, who remained calm, ears slightly back, eyes soft, and tail gently swaying. This was not a display of training or obedience. It was a partnership, a silent acknowledgement of trust and loyalty cultivated over months of careful interaction. Rex had proven that heroism was as much about emotional intelligence as it was about bravery in the field. The judge allowed a faint smile, his tone softening. "This day will not be forgotten," he said, addressing the courtroom. "The courage of a dog, the insight of a child, and the empathy between them remind us all why we strive to protect and care for one another. Let this serve as a lesson. Even the smallest voices can reveal the greatest truths, and true heroism is as much about heart as it is about action." Lily, sensing that the formal proceedings were coming to an end, leaned closer to Rex one last time. "Thank you for helping people," she whispered. The dog responded with a slight nudge of his nose, eyes meeting hers with steady calm. It was a silent conversation, a bond that required no words. Everyone in the courtroom felt the weight of it. This small act of communication carried the full force of months of trust, understanding, and shared experiences. Even the suspect's family, seated quietly in the corner, seemed touched. There was no fear, no tension, only the recognition of a bond that transcended judgment, age, and circumstance. Adults who had been hardened by years of legal proceedings and life's challenges softened, realizing that the courtroom had borne witness to something far greater than the case itself. They had seen the living proof of courage, loyalty, and empathy intertwined in the most unexpected of forms. Rex remained seated patiently, a picture of calm and attentiveness. His golden coat gleamed under the overhead lights, his presence commanding yet comforting. For Lily, he was more than a hero, he was a friend, a protector, and a teacher in quiet ways that no formal lesson could replicate. Their connection had endured through months of small interactions, quiet trust, and shared experiences. Now it had reached its emotional pinnacle, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Emma whispered to Lily as she gently guided her back to her seat. "That's enough for today, baby. You were very brave and very kind." Lily nodded slightly, still gazing at Rex with admiration. She didn't need to say more. The bond they shared, visible in her gentle touches and his calm responses, spoke volumes. Adults in the courtroom were moved in ways words could not capture, realizing that heroism often goes unrecognized unless witnessed through the lens of empathy and understanding. The final testimonies were delivered, the evidence presented, and the case concluded, yet no one left the courtroom unaffected. People whispered quietly among themselves about the remarkable insight of the tiny girl and the quiet heroism of the dog. Lawyers shook their heads in amazement, officers exchanged subtle nods of respect, and the judge, although returning to protocol, carried the warmth of the moment in his expression. This courtroom, once a place of procedure and tension, had been transformed into a living testament to courage, loyalty, and compassion. As the spectators filed out, many paused to watch Lily and Rex one last time. Some reached for their phones to quietly capture the memory, though none wanted to disturb the intimate moment. The connection between the child and the dog was palpable, a rare blend of innocence and instinct, bravery and empathy. Everyone could feel it. A hero need not roar, a hero need not act loudly. Sometimes, heroism was a gentle presence, a kind touch, or a quiet understanding. Officer Daniels finally stood, allowing Rex to stretch slightly, his movements calm and deliberate. "All right, buddy," he said softly, looking down at the dog. "Time to go, but remember, you've done something extraordinary today." Rex responded with a small wag of his tail, as if acknowledging not only the praise but the recognition of his impact. Lily waved goodbye softly, her tiny fingers brushing his fur one last time. "Goodbye, Rex," she whispered. "You're the best." Emma picked up Lily carefully, holding her close as they exited the courtroom. "You were amazing, baby," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed everyone what kindness and courage really look like." Lily smiled faintly, still thinking of Rex, her hero and friend. Outside, the cool breeze of the afternoon carried the faint sounds of the town, but for Lily, the courtroom and Rex had created a memory that would remain etched in her heart forever. Back inside, the adults remained quietly reflective. The trial had concluded, but the lesson lingered. The bond between Lily and Rex was a living example of courage, empathy, and the extraordinary impact of innocence combined with understanding. It reminded everyone present that heroism could be gentle, quiet, and deeply emotional. And sometimes, the most profound truth could come from a voice small enough to be overlooked, or from a pair of golden eyes that simply watched, listened, and responded. The story of Lily and Rex quickly spread beyond the courthouse. Local newspapers and news stations covered the remarkable interaction, highlighting the bravery of the dog and the insight of the little girl. Social media posts shared images of the courtroom moment, capturing the expressions of awe, compassion, and understanding. People from the town and surrounding areas celebrated the bond, inspired by the quiet heroism and empathy displayed in ways that transcended age, species, and circumstance. Months later, when the courthouse quieted and life returned to normal, Lily and Rex continued to see each other. Their bond, already deeply rooted, only grew stronger. Every gentle pat, every soft whisper reinforced the lessons learned that day. Lily's understanding of courage, kindness, and loyalty deepened, while Rex continued to teach her about calm, focus, and the silent power of empathy. Their friendship became a story shared throughout the community, not just a tale of a police dog and a child, but a reminder of the extraordinary impact of love, trust, and understanding. In the end, what people remembered most was not the trial, the arguments, or the evidence. It was the quiet, profound connection between a 3-year-old girl and a heroic police dog. Together, they had shown a courtroom and a community that bravery was not only measured in action, but in kindness, empathy, and the courage to understand others. And for Lily and Rex, their friendship remained, a bond that would endure long after the echoes of the courtroom faded, a testament to the extraordinary power of connection.